We walk about 250 meters through the green zone, then we get up close to MOD, so it's not bad. Colonel Richard Creed. I'm the senior advisor to the Chief of the General Staff for the Afghan Army. Yeah, what I do is I talk to his office staff and get the schedule for the week, try to understand what he's doing during the day. Then at our meetings back at Resolute Support Headquarters, we determine which issues are the most important. You know, I think a lot of the advisor's role comes into being value added for both sides, both for the coalition and in our case, the Afghan Army. My job is to facilitate communication between the Chief of the General Staff, General Karimi, and the Commander of Operation Resolute Support, General Campbell, and his staff as well. I mean, the staff's on both sides. So you're kind of a person who sits and listens to what's going on in General Karimi's office each day. You identify what issues are important to him and his way of doing business, what his priorities are, and we share them with the chain of command here to facilitate communication. If you only meet with someone from a different culture once a week, you're likely to miss some of the cues and subtleties, or catch them on a bad day, or maybe on too good of a day. So we provide that balanced insight over time. I don't pretend to be able to advise General Karimi. He's been in the Army for at least 48 years. He was commissioned the year I was born. So I'm not advising him on anything other than what's going on at the coalition. That's what I advise him about. I let him bounce ideas off me. If he says, well, what do you think General Campbell would say about this? Then I would give him a response based on my knowledge of what General Campbell thinks is important and what his priorities are. So it's kind of a team thing. I mean, it's got to be very difficult. It's got to wear on you psychologically and even physically over time to have been at war pretty much your whole life. And I had a few years where it was pretty quiet here, I think, in the earlier part of the last decade, but really they've been at war nonstop since the late 70s, early 80s. So the fact that guys get up and just deal with it because there is no alternative is pretty impressive. And that they do it in a lot of cases without cynicism. I mean, there's always a little bit of cynicism, but there's a lot of positive patriotic feeling about their nation. And so I kind of admire that. The other thing is it's very easy to criticize the way people do things until you get to learn of why things are the way they are. If there was an easy solution to all this, we wouldn't be here, and they would be able to take care of all these problems. So the longer that this lack of senior leadership, or at least permanent senior leadership, continues, the more likely it is to affect the organization. But I also think that the soldiers down in battalions and companies aren't really paying too much attention to what goes on up at those levels. As long as they're well led at the battalion and brigade level at the corps, and they are, things will be okay. The problem is if the institutional army that supports them in the field is not able to act effectively and efficiently, then you could end up seeing problems. I think the other piece of the fighting season is, last fighting season they had a lot more help from us. This fighting season they're going to do it all on their own. So there's going to be a tendency to say, well, they have a lot more casualties this year or they're having more trouble. For one thing, you feel like sometimes you get caught between a rock and a hard place, or you can if you're not careful. Our job is to represent the Afghan position on different issues in meetings and our interactions with the RS staff, and to represent the RS staff for the Afghans. So we can't forget where we're coming from and think that we're on one side or the other. You know, I'm an American colonel in the American Army as part of a NATO team, and that's my job first and foremost. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't have empathy and represent as best you can the Afghan side of things, because if we don't do it, then nobody else does. So we're the honest brokers. I don't know, it varies from week to week. You have good weeks and bad weeks. You don't want to go day by day There are things that I've been able to influence to get General Karimi to see our point of view on certain things and agree to support a course of action that we think is important for Afghanistan. And at the same time, I think I've had some success representing General Karimi's position on different issues and get us to support what he would like to do, because there's a lot of give and take in this kind of relationship. It's in our interest to make sure that Afghanistan is successful.